Yeah.
So, yours got the name on it.
Oh.
It was last semester. I could have it's.
I know.
Not that I just something So he's out there, and Rob's out there. You'd expect to have some questions.
Oh.
And then
Answer them on.
yeah, so it's like 8:30, I'm trying to like pronounce this stuff, I'm just trying to get out, and then people, it's like, do you have the car ready for us? I'm like, well, normally, yes, but one of our guys driving out the other one of our cars, that please. He's like, well, we have having people, we can arrange to have all ours picked up, but it's not like, it's my plan to have him leave the car at L on his first day and leave it grab him on my way in, and bring him to the office. If they would help you.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to today's meeting of the Vision Zero Council. This is the final and fourth quarterly meeting or final meeting of the year for the council. I'm just going to do a little housekeeping and then we can get started. I believe everyone can hear and see on Zoom. This is our first time doing a hybrid. Nice to see folks in person and online this morning. If you're experiencing any issues from the Zoom version, please let me know through the chat. Today's meeting will be recorded. The recording and meeting presentation will be posted to the Vision Zero website, along with all other Vision Zero related materials, including meeting minutes and upcoming meeting schedules. All panelists will be responsible to mute themselves until they speak. Due to FOIA and public access laws, please refrain from using the chat feature for anything other than our ability to coordinate or help speakers who need assistance using Zoom. The question and answer field at the bottom of the participant pane will be used for public comment. Please refrain from entering public comments into the Q&A field until the public comment portion of the meeting takes place. Public comment will take place at the end of the meeting, and participants may raise their virtual hand to signify a desire to speak and wait to be recognized. To do so, you may open the participant pane and click raise hand at the bottom of the panel. Participants may also utilize the question and answer field at the bottom of the participant pane. In-person comments will be prioritized ahead of those entered into the Q&A field. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Council Chair, Commissioner Ugaleo.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. So good morning. So we did send out the minutes ahead of time. Appreciate everyone being here and looking at the materials. Ahead on the screen is the agenda for today. So we have after we do the meeting minutes, we will have agency updates. So recapping the year from several of our agencies. Then we will have our subcommittees report out on the work that they've done this year and their recommendations to be submitted to the legislature. And then we're going to talk about 2025, what we want to do moving forward. There's been some discussion about subcommittee work, some additional tasks subcommittees can take on. We'll talk about topics and dates and then discussion, and then we'll have public comment. So go to the next one, which is so for the subcommittee or for the council members, you received the meeting minutes when I sent that out. So are there any questions on the meeting minutes that were distributed? Seeing none. Okay. All those in favor of adoption of the minutes? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Screen, don't see anyone. Okay, I will consider the meeting minutes adopted. So next item on the agenda is updates from our agencies who sit on the council. So we'll start with CONDOT. We'll first have Brian Pavlik from our Highway Safety Office present, and then we'll have Matt Bloom from the Bureau of Engineering and Construction present. So Brian.
Great, good morning. First, I want to apologize for my voice. It's been a little bit off for the past couple of weeks, so if there's any challenges, please excuse that. We're going to go over some of the crash data trends we're looking at for the past year. Going to go to the next slide. Many of you may have seen this graphic, and this shows over the past 5 years to date. So this is as of December 12th, the crash data fatalities for the year. For passengers and drivers, we're down 3.6% compared to the past 5 years average. Pedestrians were up 12.5%. Motorcyclists were up 27.9%, and bicyclists were up 5.2%. Those are of note. And again, this is the past comparison to the average of the past 5 years. Next slide. Here in this table, we're looking at the total fatality numbers. So as of 11/30, this would be the latest data that we had. We have 307 total fatalities in the state. That has gone up. We have 308 now. It looks like we may surpass 2023. We're pretty close to it at this point. We have a couple weeks left. The second number of fatalities there, motorcyclist fatalities, we are at 76 total. As you can see, that's the highest it's been in the past 10 years. Pedestrian fatalities, we're at 61 again, and that is the second highest compared to 2022 when we were at 68. And then bicyclist fatalities, we're at 4, which is comparable to what we had in the recent past. Next slide. Here we're looking at citation data for the past 10 years. During COVID pandemic 2020 and 2021, we saw a precipitous drop in citations, about 55%. Since that time, it's gone up a little bit. We'll see in 2024, the data we have is as of 10/31. We have 2 more months of citation data to collect. It will surpass 2023, but we have not returned to the pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels. Fine. Here we're looking at toxicology results for alcohol only. So this would be drivers killed in crashes with any level of alcohol present in the toxicology report. Positive alcohol detection, as you can see, has fluctuated from 32% to 43%. Here we're looking solely at cannabis in toxicology results, again with drivers only. And as you can see, there was a bump in 2020 and 2021. Since that time, it's leveled out to about 32%. And again, this is drivers only killed in fatal crashes. Next slide. So what we did next was we looked at the toxicology results for both alcohol and cannabis presence. Our range has been about 12 to 18% over the past 7 years. And we also want to note that the presence of cannabis does not imply impairment. Here, this is alcohol at a level of 0.08. So it's impairment by alcohol with cannabis present. Could be delta-9 THC, it could also be metabolites. Next. This table here is showing us our wrong way fatal crashes over the past 10 years. We had a sharp increase, as everyone knows, in 2022 with 23 total fatalities, 13 crashes. 2024 has turned out to be a higher number. We have 13 total fatalities with 6 crashes. And that's comparable to 2019 before the pandemic. Alcohol impairment was present in the majority of these crashes. And some also had other drugs included, but the majority of them have been impaired by alcohol. Next slide. This is just a visualization of the data from the table. Again, you can see that spike in 2022. We had a lull in 2020 and 2021. And then we have this bump back up in 2024. All right.
Morning, everybody. My name is Matt Bloom. I'm with the Division of Traffic Engineering here at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. I'm not going to get really in depth with the data, because you just heard from Brian. Just a couple things I wanted to make note of. Traffic engineering uses the fatal and serious injury crash data from police reports, really to identify trends and formulate potential solutions to some of the trends that we're seeing. And our goal ultimately is to lower the fatal and serious injury crash risks statewide by leveraging federal safety dollars and implementing projects. Next slide, please. Work to achieve this goal is implemented through the safe systems approach. A lot of you probably have heard of the analogy of a three-legged stool with three equally important aspects, in this case of safety. If one of those legs is weak, the stool falls over. Well, in our case, we prefer a five-leg stool, which is the safe systems approach. Focusing on safer people, safer vehicles, post-crash care, safer speeds, and safer roads. The most important bullet on this slide, from my perspective at least, is that redundancy is critical. If one component of the system isn't functioning as it should be, we hope that the other aspects are in place to improve the outcomes. Next slide, please. So taking a slightly deeper dive into our crash data, it shows that about 40% of the fatal and serious crashes in Connecticut are because of roadway departures. So we've got an awful lot of projects that are focused towards roadway departure. We've been doing centerline rumble strips on state roadways. We analyze the roadways anytime they're paved, and centerline rumble strips are around a 50% reduction in fatal and injury crashes on two-lane rural roads from federal studies. We've also been implementing high friction surface treatments. If you notice going around a corner on a state road, the color of the pavement might change. That's intentional. That different color just has to do with a different type of aggregate that has much more friction. So it helps the car take that corner without sliding off the road. Federal studies show that that's a very effective way to keep cars on the roadway. We've been implementing projects to put up horizontal curb warning signs, again, with studies showing significant improvements in nighttime crash performance. And we've been working with our municipalities to replace and upgrade their speed limit signs on local roads. Next slide, please. The next highest category of crashes in Connecticut is intersection related, angle type crashes, and it represents about a quarter of the injuries, fatal and serious injury crashes in Connecticut. So some things that we've been doing to mitigate that is we've been working on clearance intervals of traffic signals. We implemented a program to update all of the DOT's traffic signals a couple of years ago. We're working with municipal traffic signals right now. We've been working on upgrading signs at municipal intersections, actually both state and municipal intersections. And we've been doing a program at this point for replacing pedestrian signal infrastructure. So countdown pedestrian heads, LPI with concurrent, upgraded signs and markings. Sorry. The engineer in me, sorry. So current studies are showing that one of the most effective ways for a pedestrian to get across the street, one of the safest ways for a pedestrian to get across the street, is with a type of phasing that's referred to as leading pedestrian interval. So when a pedestrian pushes the button, they get an amount of time, typically about 7 seconds, where no cars move. It lets them get out in the street, it lets them become visible, and then the phasing turns to typical concurrent like you'd see everywhere across the country. And again, studies show that that's the most effective way to cross a pedestrian. Next slide, please. nationally, and unfortunately, there's been a trend in our vulnerable road user crashes going up. Very similar in the state of Connecticut. So we've been deploying some projects to mitigate those. We've been putting up rectangular rapid flashing beacons, which are the pedestrian signs with the yellow wigwag flashes. We've put up, we've got over 100 of them on state and municipal roads at this point. A change that we've made recently to this program is we're adding lighting to all the new ones. Because also pedestrian visibility is critical. The nighttime pedestrian crash rate is pretty high. So we've been adding lighting to that. Commonly in the state of Connecticut, when you come up to a crosswalk, the sign that you'll notice, the pedestrian warning sign, is commonly on the right-hand side. We've got a project right now in construction that's going to take those signs and put them on both sides of the road to make the crosswalk a little more conspicuous. And a big initiative that we've been working on is implementing road diets. So anytime a 4-lane road or a road with greater than 4 lanes is paved, we review the volumes and the pedestrian activity, looking to remove lanes. So we'll take a 4-lane cross section, change it to a 3-lane cross section with 1 lane in each direction and a 2-way left turn lane in the middle, providing much more space on the side for pedestrians and cyclists. Next page, please. Wrong way driving is also on the rise. So we've been working very hard on mitigating that. We've put up activated wrong way detection systems in concert with our highway operations group. We've got over 100 of those systems running. We've been upgrading pavement markings on secondary roads, adding signs and markings above and beyond what's required. You might also notice as you're driving through intersections at ramps, if you're not allowed to make a movement, so if you're not allowed to make a right turn at a traffic signal, instead of a yellow ball, you'll see a yellow arrow. Instead of a green ball, you'll see a green arrow. Just to reinforce the movement that you're supposed to make and discourage an improper movement. We're looking at putting red delineators on guide rails on ramps. So if you're driving up the wrong way, you'll see little red tags on the guide rail. Again, every way we can to reinforce that somebody's going up the wrong way. And we've also been doing a public awareness campaign. We've got social media. There's an advertisement on television, which we'll see shortly. You might have heard the awareness campaign while you're filling up at your gas station. It's honestly where I hear it the most. Next slide, please. In addition to pushing projects out, we're also looking towards the future, trying to figure out what projects we should initiate next. We're currently working on a roundabout study, which is identifying the highest risk intersections in Connecticut where roundabout may reduce the crash risk. The intention for that is to deploy a project in the next year or so. Similarly with illumination, we've got a study that's looking at intersection and crosswalk illumination statewide. Again, looking to properly locate some future projects. We're looking at pedestrian crash locations. That study is looking, focusing on a couple of urban areas, trying to figure out where the highest risk of pedestrian crashes are and what potential drivers are there. Is there something that could be changed at some of these intersections so we can deploy countermeasures statewide? We're also looking at raised intersections and raised crosswalks. We're putting pavement markings on local roads. And really important, we're doing before after studies to make sure that what we're doing is effective. Next slide, please. Some of the policies that have advanced in this past year. We're now doing centerline rumble strips as a matter of policy. The commissioner had signed a policy this past year requiring centerline rumble strips be installed anywhere that they're appropriate. So there's a bunch of criteria, and if the criteria is met, centerline rumble strips go in. As of January 1st, we're going to be starting a process of intersection control evaluation. Anytime a new intersection is built or an existing intersection is modified, the engineer is going to have to go through a process that focuses on safety to determine what the most appropriate intersection control is before they advance the project. And I'm sure you've all heard a lot from Gary about the complete streets policy, which is really changing the way that we do business here at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. We also focus on non-infrastructure projects. So we support high-risk rural road enforcement, safe roads to school, a work zone safety campaign, as well as the runway training education program. And we've got a video, I think, on the next slide.
Look for the signs. Be sure you're going the right way, because if you're wrong, you're dead.
So that video plays both at gas stations. I've seen them there. It's also on, as advertisement on television. It's also been played through major sporting events, just to get the message across. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Any questions for Matt or for Brian?
Sorry.
Got one question here in the room. Yep. So,
Terry Thompson, I'm with the Capital Region and also the Traffic Incident Management. And the Enforcement Subcommittee Chair. Is there a way for us to get the statistics on what it would be is if the BAC was 0.05? I know the statistics reflect 0.08, but could we get statistics that would show what it would be if it was 0.05?
Yeah, we've done some evaluation of the tox reports on the 0.05 levels as well. I think that's on that data. We can share it with you.
thank you. So next we have Emergency Services Public Protection, Connecticut State Police. I don't know who's gonna present. If you want to come up or,
It's better for sound, if you don't mind, just because we have the hybrid, if you don't mind, focus on virtually, can hear better from that microphone.
that way the camera's centered right on.
I hope you guys don't mind if I chirp in every now and again.
No, the mic up above you can see.
Awesome, thank you.
You're more than welcome to try, Mission. All right. So from desk perspective, Lieutenant Cintron and I'm John Akapour from the Traffic Services Unit. We kind of been approaching our perspective from not just an enforcement perspective, which obviously we believe wholeheartedly in, but as well as instituting new enforcement initiatives and educational initiatives as well. The biggest update, the biggest program we've implemented over the past year, predominantly actually over the last few months, is a fatal collision mitigation initiative, which is kind of a spinoff of what Terry and I in the enforcement subcommittee have been proposing for 2 years now, to make it permanent in legislation. We've been doing this in-house in the meantime. So it's been a zero tolerance effort, focusing primarily on our high crash corridors, using data from Yukon Crash Repository, our partners here at DOT. Predominantly I-91 from the Mass border in Enfield down to Wallingford into New Haven, I-95 in Fairfield County, I-84 Southington, the Manchester range. We've also included again New Haven, Route 8 as needed. Also, I've done the entire coastline along I-95. What we're doing is deploying troopers outside of their normal shifts and patrol operations, deployed in our traditional cruisers, as well as we've recently deployed some unmarked unconventional vehicles. Initiatives with our aviation unit, primarily on Route 8. So the numbers that we've gleaned from this have been outstanding, which is why we stand by this program so much. We've used over 4,200 hours of additional enforcement outside normal patrol or traffic unit shifts. This is since September first. So over 4,200 hours since September first. It's resulted in 533 shifts ranging from a range of about 4 to 8 hours. In this time frame, we've made 39 arrests, including OUI, reckless driving, narcotics arrest, and then failure to appear and warrants served. The majority of those arrests are reckless driving, which you have been publicized in social media as well as media, where you know, probably have seen guys who have been arrested for driving over 120, or they've come up with some crazy excuses. Those are predominantly arrests that are occurring on this initiative. So this is 39 additional arrests over, again, patrol and normal traffic operations. So statistics from this, and they're a little underreported right now as we collect the final data. So again, since September 1st, an additional 6,403 traffic stops. 4,100 of those were speeding infractions, and 134 cell phone violations, and 123 misdemeanor summonses for reckless driving. So again, in those 4,200 hours and 533 shifts, more than 6,400 traffic stops. So, which is why we stand behind this program, and we would like to make it permanent with what Terry and I have been proposing in our portion of Division Zero Council.
John, if I can interrupt you for
Yep.
a second. What we've been trying to do is implement this program that is more of a quality versus quantity type of approach. We're reeling in from issues that are affecting policing across the nation, including retention and recruitment issues. So we have to deal with that somehow while still trying to up and maintain safety on our roadways. So like John pointed out, we've tried to analyze using your data, our cars data, UConn repository, what are the roadways that are causing the most catastrophic, what are the roadways that are being subjected to the most catastrophic events? And then we deploy those highly motivated troopers in those areas during those times of concern. And it's a difficult task, because if you even go back to our own internal state police jurisdictional fatals, last year, July was our the highest month with 19. This year, October came out of nowhere with 18. So, you know, we're using those year over year stats and whatnot to try to best deploy our guys. But the program has been widely hailed with success. We're anticipating, knock on some wood, in state police jurisdiction, a lower fatal rate than last year at the end of this year, hopefully, barring any catastrophes at the end of this month. But as John said, we put a proposal forward to our own department to make this this fatal accident team a permanent entity, and we're hoping it could get some push, maybe legislative. Sorry.
So in addition to this mitigation initiative, we've used our own traffic unit to develop some new strategic enforcement initiatives. So we're deploying our own personnel within these targeted within these zones to do targeted and saturation enforcement. So again, we're using the data like the lieutenant is saying, but we're also responding to what we'd say more prolific events. So if we see a fatality occur that may even be outside of that normal area, we'll deploy and saturate troopers within that area in response. We're doing, again, strategic initiatives, especially around like the holiday season. Example, we did right around surrounding the Thanksgiving holiday. So in addition to the fatal collision mitigation initiative, we deployed our own unit around the Thanksgiving holiday, resulted in another about 170 traffic stops, about the same in infractions. Within just a few day time frame, another $20,000 in commercial fines and an additional OUI arrest. We've also recently partnered with some other outside agencies. We get requests all the time for assistance in towns. So we partnered with the South Central Regional Traffic Unit over the last couple of months, includes East Haven, North Brantford, and a few others. So we deploy our troopers out with them as well to extend that relationship and partnership. We've also increased our footprint of investigations. So in addition to just enforcement, our troopers are out there doing commercial investigations. So trying to glean from that perspective, if there's any aspect of commercial motor vehicle law that may have contributed to collisions and the increase in any statistics. The educational component, we've also realized is as big as the enforcement component. So predominantly in conjunction with you guys here with the Highway Safety Office. So with the deployment of our seatbelt convincer, our rollover simulator, we've had more than 150 requests in 2023 and 2024, anticipated to beat this in 2025. These are requests for fairs, summer camps, driving schools, high schools, again, like the mock crashes, company safety outings, touch a truck events. We've been to pretty much all the colleges, more than a dozen high schools, the naval base a couple of times. Pretty much anyone who has some relevancy to traffic and highway safety or increasing that, that knowledge, we will go out to, we can, and we'll accommodate the request. We've also had some really fantastic partnerships we've built over the last year. Hartford Healthcare's trauma team and their Not One More program. We've also worked with the Elm Haven Hospital. We also have a new connection, at Griffin Hospital now that we'll be expanding into 2025 as well. When we do these events, they're multifaceted. So it could be our seatbelt convincer machine, our rollover simulator machine. We now have new impairment goggles, some dexterity games, some simulation games to really drive home how important it is to maintain sober driving, no distracted driving, no speeding. So it's kind of multifaceted, really all encompassing. And then kind of like the last part is technology deployment. We can't do this without our fantastic partnership with you guys here at DOT. And thanks to that, over the last year alone, about 65 new laser speed measuring devices, 12 new radars, passive alcohol sensing flashlights to assist with roadside OUI arrest, unmarked unconventional vehicles. Not going to say what those are because I don't want people to know that, especially in a public setting. Tint meters, especially to go after what is now the growing problem of the tinted windshields and carpet crashes and fatalities. My personal favorite, our new seatbelt convincer machine, which has had huge praise over the last year, going out to all these new events. People love it, and it really drives home the importance of not just wearing your seatbelt, but how catastrophic a high-speed crash can be. So just going forward into the future, some few punch list projects we're working on. Again, like Lieutenant is saying, the continuation of the fatal collision mitigation program and looking to make that a permanent program with our agency. We are looking obviously into the law enforcement phlebotomy program, which we know is going to be huge. We maintain in traffic the enforcement branch of the automated work zone safety enforcement, so increasing our footprint of that. OUI spot checks, we're looking to get out there more, expansion of the DRE program, car seat safety technicians, and then deployment of additional e-citation technology for greater transparency. And we're proud to say for the first time, we're looking at the deployment of e-citation and computers on our agency motorcycles to do some really strategic enforcement. And, that's a huge project that we're excited to deploy. So. A lot.
I think one more thing, in addition to all the tech stuff that John listed, the aircraft speed enforcement stuff, we did an initiative with Troop L on Route 8. I don't have the stats for me, I apologize, but I think it was a success. The lieutenant over there was pumped about it. It had some good feedback, so we'd probably be looking in with you guys to maybe getting more lines painted on more troubled areas where we can go out there and work in conjunction with our ESU unit. And deploy that, and then again, it's also a campaign thing, like, hey, we're out there, we're not only here on the ground, but now we're in the air. I mean, it's one of those, be loud about it kind of, enforcement activity, so, thank you, John.
Any questions? Thank you all. You say the Attorney's Office. Yep.
Good morning, I'm Nancy Chupak. I am the Traffic Safety Resource Prosecutor with the Division of Criminal Justice. This past year, the division has conducted numerous trainings of police officers and recruits regarding not only the requirements of General Statute 14227A and related statutes pertaining to impaired driving, but with regard to the still new cannabis legislation and what officers can and cannot do as a result of these statutes. We have conducted training and answered numerous field requests for help regarding Connecticut's erasure statutes and the recent amendment to these statutes, particularly regarding how to calculate whether a defendant is a first or subsequent OUI, operating under the influence offender, which affects the range of penalties that person faces. We also have alerted prosecutors and worked with the Division of Scientific Services regarding the new United States Supreme Court decision of Smith versus Arizona that restricted in certain circumstances a lab technician from testifying at trial as to the results obtained by testing from a different lab technician. We also have been involved in LEP, the Law Enforcement Phlebotomy Program, teaching the legal aspects regarding to police blood draws, and particularly the search and seizure requirements pertaining to them. In the different working groups that I participate in, we have been discussing ways to prevent cannabis impaired driving, including looking at ways to amend the criminal statutes pertaining to using cannabis in motor vehicles and the police conducting motor vehicle stops based on them. Finally, we have also been discussing how to move forward with electronic warrants so that police may quickly obtain a warrant for a blood draw. The initial working group on this issue issued a final report, which they had provided to the governor, but as best as I can discern, nothing has happened since. So we want to see how we can push that forward. And that's all I have to report.
Any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, there she is. Hi, Susan.
Here I am. How are you doing? Hi, I'm Susan Logan. I am part of the Injury and Violence Surveillance Unit here at DPH. Just want to give a few highlights of some of the stuff we've worked on in 2024. Our staff has been involved with creating fact sheets around motor vehicle injury, mainly emergency room visits, as well as mortality trends. We look at different demographics as well, age group, race, ethnicity, sex, when we supply this information. So we can share this with you folks on the panelists and Commissioner Eucalito and Aaron Swanson at a later time. Another initiative we've been involved with is we have a data sharing agreement with the Yukon Transportation Research Center. We have been providing, we just updated some recent data that we sent them in October related to hospital discharge data, traumatic injury data, and EMS data. So we're hoping they'll be able to link some of this historical emergency department data and trauma data with the crash data. And that's something that we've been doing for a couple of years now. Another thing we have started working on is one of our staff, Susan Yurosevich, is now part of the Impaired Driving Task Force, which DPH is in statute required to be a part of. And we've also been working with some of the folks from the Transportation Safety Research Center on supporting the application that they are applying for, a grant that they're applying for CDC funding. Other things that we've been involved with in our Office of Injury Violence Prevention is we actually fund a few local health departments to do child safety seat injury prevention. So there's some work that was recently done with the New Haven Health Department. We have some funding from CDC. We do provide them funding for the car seats, education that they're doing to the residents of the New Haven area. So some of that work has been going on for several years now, and we've shown it to be successful. Another thing that we recently went to was there was a child passenger safety conference, press conference that New Haven Health and DPH were a part of, and they had safety seat fit technicians there on hand to help the parents properly install car seats. So we've been heavily involved with car seat safety for a while. And then finally, we have a cannabis surveillance program that pretty much started right when recreational cannabis was legalized here in Connecticut. So we've been working on examining that data for a while. So there has been some additional questions being incorporated into the Connecticut Child School Health Survey, as well as our adult survey data from the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System. And one of the couple of the questions that we do ask high school students in grades 9 through 12 is have they been driving after they've used marijuana, and have they been riding in a car with a driver who had been using marijuana? So some of those stats we're looking at now, as well as some adult stats on cannabis use among people who have driven after using cannabis. So that report will be ready before April 1st, 2025. There's just some of the highlights on the stuff that DPH has been working on. Thank you.
Great, the data piece is critical. Especially when we hear the anecdotes where people don't think that cannabis use while driving is as dangerous as alcohol. Which is frightening to hear people think that way.
If any other agencies that are represented on the council have any updates that they want to share, I know I saw some other folks, council members on virtually. You don't have to, but if we have relevant safety updates to share, now.
So, DMV or anyone else wants to provide an update? There's Commissioner Guerrero.
Good morning, everyone. Let me give you a brief update of what the Connecticut Department of Motor Vehicles is doing. First of all, in regards to awareness and education, we attend the police chief's quarterly traffic meetings. We also have the child passenger safety classes for all violators. And we also, as you all know, in September, we do a safety week for child passenger car seats. And we also have the teen driving video contest and the safe driving video to serve as an educational bridge between the renewals of licenses. In regards to compliance, I'm happy to say that the Department of Motor Vehicle Inspection Unit has pulled over close to 16,000 commercial vehicle inspections. Of those 16,000, over 1,200 drivers and over 3,400 vehicles were placed out of service. In regards to school bus inspections, we have inspected almost 10,300, and out of the 10,003, we have placed out of service 818. The DMV inspection lane, obviously, which we have in regards to compliance, has all salvage for vehicles, trailers, or any type of big vehicles such as buses or even tractor trailers. In regards to impaired driving, we have 25 plus that have taught that we teach in regards to law enforcement at the police academy, whether it's post or CSP. Over 5,700 impaired driving arrest report were processed, and out of that, 587 drug cases have been adjudicated in regards to the cannabis legislation. Over 1,700 operators have challenged their suspensions, and of that, 1,643 licenses were suspended. So you're looking at over 95 plus in regards to suspension. Real quick in regards to new legislation, we're looking at obviously the automated work zone safety expansion, low-speed vehicles in regards to the roadway operations, school bus purchases with child safety belts, in regards to giving them an incentive for municipalities to have that in their vehicles or in their school buses, and the dangers of cannabis, wrong way driving encounters in the driving schools curriculum. We've been working closely with the DOT on that, especially for the upcoming legislation, how we can get that message out to a broader spectrum of kids when we start taking the test and so forth. I will say this on another note, that our inspectors have done a very good job of going out to the work zones on our highways and finding, obviously, unfortunately, tractor trailers or vehicles in excess of 80, 90, even close to 100 miles per hour. We've been able to pull those vehicles over, and obviously arrests have been made. So with that, we will talk about some other things later on. Jim Politis, our legislative liaison, will talk a little bit about upcoming legislation, and Sean Formica and Ernie Bertolfi will talk later on in regards to what they're doing on the DMV side. Thank you. Any questions?
No, I will say I have seen your inspectors out there doing enforcement quite heavily, so, I assume they're not trying to sting me, but I appreciate the, enforcement they're doing, every morning when I'm out, either, traveling to a different part of the state. I see their vehicles out there, inspecting and conducting enforcement, so it's great to see their presence out there.
And Commissioner Ugalito, just so you know, we did hire a new division chief for our CVSD department. And one of the things we're going to be looking at very closely is adding more staff to our division in regards to the inspections and being out there on our roadways more visible. We want to cover the state. We want to blanket the state. We want to make our a presence out there that if people are going to be driving vehicles that are not ready for our roadways, they're going to get pulled over and they're going to be fined or they're going to lose their license, one or the other.
Anyone else, any other agency want to report out? Okay, don't see anybody. Okay. So the next piece of the agenda is the subcommittee updates. So as everyone remembers, I'll just recap. When we set up the Vision Zero Council, we felt it was important to get a broader voice at the table, including those from outside state government. So we established 4 subcommittees: engineering, enforcement, equity, and education. Through that, we had chairs of each subcommittee who participate and do a lot of, the chairs of the subcommittees and the subcommittees themselves are doing a lot of the work to come up with concepts that are to be shared with the legislature. Coming off of a big win from when we had the initial package of Vision Zero recommendations, which I will pause to say, I think many of you may have seen. One of the big pieces that came out of the Vision Zero Council was recommendation for speed safety cameras, automated cameras for municipal use. That has now been in place, and the first approved municipality was just approved last week. Washington, Connecticut, up in Northwest Connecticut, is the first one to have an approved package. So they will be able to implement their own municipal speed cameras in Washington, Connecticut. And that's largely because of the work of the Vision Zero councils and the subcommittee. So thank you everyone for your effort there. And thank you to the Transportation Committee chairs who made that a priority of theirs, especially Representative Lamar. So this year, there was a continued ask to have the subcommittees continue to meet, look at what passed in the past session, what didn't pass, and consider those recommendations and come up with additional recommendations to either resubmit or newly submit to the legislature as part of our annual report. And as a reminder, what we did last year and what we intend to do this year is provide the legislature with a summary of all the work to date the Vision Zero Council has done, as well as recapping each of the subcommittee's recommendations. It will not be the Vision Zero Council voting on or against each independent recommendation. It will just be providing the legislature each subcommittee's report out of what the work they've done and what they think would help move the needle on safety. We did receive the package of recommendations from the subcommittees. I don't know if we want to have each subcommittee chair talk a little bit about what's in there. So I will first turn it over to our engineering chairs if there's anything they want to talk about in their package. Okay. Only if you want to.
Happy to talk about what we can come up with.
So good morning, I'm Chuck Harlow. I'm the co-chair of the engineering subcommittee. And we came up with a package, some of the things that repeats from last year that we brought up that we thought we should still wanted to move forward. I think we ran out of time. It was a short session. There was a lot of different things. So the complete streets requirements that the DOT came up with, which Very happy with that. We were trying to, one of the ideas we came up was maybe to push it down to a municipal level. That, you know, I know a lot of municipalities are really in favor of these things, but we want to make it more visible to the municipalities because we think it really will drive down crashes. The other thing is, and I see the state police seem to be doing something similar to what we're requiring, was the designation of safety corridors. They seem to be doing it on their own, but we thought we might want to make it more firm and look at for safety quarters to enhance enforcement and often double fines on stretches of roadway where the data is showing there's issues or concerns. And this is something we feel needs to have legislative authority, obviously, so that to make it legal to make these increased fines. One of the things that's come up, and we've shared this with the education subcommittee, is, I don't know if anybody's recently had children learning driver's education. It's very expensive. And we noticed the crash data is showing that about 10% of fatals and 10% of serious injury crashes are both unlicensed and younger driver caused by younger and unlicensed drivers and aggressive and speeding drivers. So we feel if there's a way to get these younger drivers, unlicensed drivers, we're not sure how to do this, to reduce the costs, or either, tax credits or some way to get these people to be able to afford to get driver's education. We thought that might be helping in driving down the crashes and serious injuries and fatals. And one thing we've always thrown in there, and it's just is to fund Vision Zero initiatives, right? There's a lot of Vision Zero initiatives come out, and whether there's money behind that, we felt the legislature could put money behind some of these initiatives for these things to get off the ground and move forward. And the last thing was just to endorse and support requiring motorcycle helmets. And that's come up with other youth groups, and the lowering of the BAC to 0.05. And that's it.
I don't know if anyone from the enforcement side wants to report out. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but you're welcome to. Because I know we did report out a little bit on the recommendations, but these are your final ones if you want to talk about them, Sherry.
Good morning, I'm Carrie Thompson. I'm with the Capital Region and also the chair of the Enforcement Subcommittee.
I am here again.
Sergeant. So he'll start off on going through some of the recommendations, and I'll pick up towards the end.
Yeah, so this was my first year as co-chair with Terry, so I jumped in and, tried to help expand on a lot with the council was proposing from the previous year. So a lot of our recommendations were more or less expansions of previous recommendations. So the first of ours being the continued implementation of the automated work zone safety program as it currently stands. Our group was also big on expanding that outside of just work zones. I was also pushing for time distance or average speed cameras that are seen not so much here in the United States, but mostly overseas. And the story I would tell them, and I'll tell it here, is as sort of the administrator of during the pilot program of this, when we'll just say some perturbed people were unhappy with some tickets they have gotten. They said, well, I can just slow down for the work zone and then just go fast again. And that's meant not in a disrespectful way by any stretch of imaginations. And I said, well, listen, you're correct. I wouldn't recommend it. So the counter to that would be a time distance type of camera situation. So as that program expands, our second recommendation was to review and revise the statutes related to cannabis, for the use of cannabis while operating a motor vehicle. Again, speaking from firsthand experience, we can speak to the frustrations as law enforcement, the frustrating inability to stop someone for merely seeing them consuming what we suspect to be cannabis while driving without some type of other ancillary violation. So speaking from the frustrations of that, especially considering we do have open container laws where you cannot consume alcohol while operating a motor vehicle, and as a misdemeanor alone for operating while, or excuse me, drinking while driving, not just drinking while under the influence. So it makes sense to expand that to cannabis as well. Our third recommendation, what we're doing right now, we like to see made permanent legislation would be our high visibility fatal mitigation team. We've seen the wild success it's had so far in just 3 months. Especially knowing that there is a core group of 25 to 30 people alone with our agency who have the passion and drive behind this that the lieutenant and I share, but we have boots on the ground people that really want to make a difference and see it succeed. Our fourth recommendation was to enact the helmet law. Again, I know multiple groups have suggested this, and you know, we support that as well. And then touch on it a little. Support DOT's submission regarding open container law. And I'll turn it over to you for some of the.
Okay. So for recommendation 6, it was resubmitting the 2 bills. The one was the act reducing the blood alcohol limits for impaired driving and boating. It was under substitute Senate Bill number 424 last year. I think gotta go back at it. Also the substitute Senate bill that went through for 423 that reflects back on what he said about cannabis. There were some amendments made to that. I think that there's some things, and it's an act improving highway safety by prohibiting driving while ability impaired and studying methods to detect cannabis impaired driving. I think that bill should go back to the House. Recommendation 7 is more a general statement with the Vision Zero Task Force. And what Nancy had brought up about blood and saliva testing, the pilot program has been going pretty well. And e-warrants, we think that that's an important step that needs to be taken so that they can do that on scene to get that warrant. And a joint meeting, and Commissioner, maybe you have done this already with the Strategic Highway Safety Plan emphasis areas. There's a lot of safety committees that are meeting in a lot of different areas. And just make sure that we're collaborating and we're jointly have the same voice. And we like to see more engagement with insurance companies. We think that that's an important thing to discuss on highway safety and the current laws, technology, and liability. That also leads to bigger, broader car manufacturers. How many more lights can you put on a vehicle? And, you know, the use of LEDs and other things, we have to start looking at it, not from just the driver perspective, but we also have to be looking at it from the pedestrian and bicyclist and other drivers experiencing those effects. And last but not least, from the engineering subcommittee and the other subcommittees, we fully support all of what they want to do. Safety corridors, we've already been talking about that at the Capital Region. Studying about safety corridors, I think it's a great thing to do. And I think that's something we should also be, and it is a legislative requirement, so. That's it for us. All right.
Morning, I'm Katie Hedberg from Connecticut DOT.
I'm Alex Slacky from AAA Northeast. I'm trying to figure out where to look. I'm like looking directly into the camera. It's probably no good. So we had a couple of recommendations. You know, I'll talk about one, then I'll pass it over to Katie. And I think one that we've, you know, kind of tossed over and mulled over for a couple of years is standing up a formalized car seat distribution program that's income qualified. Because right now, you know, it's a little bit ad hoc. We have car seat fitting stations around the state. We have car seat technicians around the state. We have multiple agencies involved with that, as we heard. And if a family is in need and the station happens to have one, or they're at an event and they have a car seat to give away, they'll, you know, likely give the car seat away if the kid's coming in a seat that would be actively unsafe for them to leave that event. But what we've seen in some other states is they've set up kind of a formalized program where, you know, if you're income qualified based on Medicaid eligibility or SNAP or WIC or whatever the parameters are, I don't think we've taken a formal position on what those parameters should be, but make it a formalized income qualified program, so that you know, we can make sure all the kids that are riding in cars have the seats they need, work with the fitting stations around the state to distribute them. I know I was looking at the stats from UConn, and I think it was like 1,698, I think, kids under 5, so who should be in a car seat, either rear or forward facing, were involved in crashes over the last 5 years without being in any sort of car seat. So either entirely unrestrained or, you know, in a seatbelt. Not even a booster seat, I don't think. So obviously those numbers are way too high. We want to make sure, you know, some of it is lack of access to seats, some of it is lack of awareness, and I know lack of awareness, we're all working on. A lot of our agencies, all the techs are on the state, and they do a great job. And I think, you know, just making sure that folks have the access to the seats they need will be very helpful for everybody.
And then another recommendation we had was increasing funding for the community connectivity grant program. That really focuses on supporting municipalities with pedestrians and cyclists, safety improvements in those areas.
And one other comment, we kind of cross-endorsed some of the recommendations of the other committees, some of the materials from last time, but one comment on the police phlebotomy program. I think one thing that would be helpful to see is just, you know, kind of a fact sheet, whether it's on the state police's website, DOT's website, about how it works. I know there was kind of a media blitz that was fairly successful, you know, back over the summer when the program got kicked off. So that was great. It would be great to have kind of a fact sheet of here's how the program works, here's why it's needed, here's kind of the chain of custody of the sample, just so the public can be aware if they want.
Thank you both. And education.
Hello, Amy Watkins, co-chair of the Education Subcommittee. Sorry, I'm not there in person. So our recommendations, we have a few. One that we've mentioned before is updating the Vision Zero program of distinction language. So after that did pass in 2023, and it was implemented, there came out of that some suggestions for making it a little bit more inclusive and eliminate some barriers to application and access to the program. And so we've submitted those changes already. Our biggest recommendation is so many of the things that were brought up and discussed were things that we felt that we needed more information to be able to make a solid recommendation about. So that includes, you know, looking at data, looking at national best practices, and things like that. So what we thought the next step should be is to fund a research position sort of in line with the Office of Policy Management, where you have somebody who is dedicated to actually looking at comparative data, best practices, et cetera, to try to find out what is the best thing to recommend to the legislature instead of us guessing in a few meetings in a year. So we proposed that there would be some funding to back this position, and some things that they could look at, for example, are delinquent vehicle registrations to look at common themes, and looking at the status of window tinting regulations, looking at the driver's education program, and equity as far as access to driver's education and what other states are doing and how we can monitor that. So that's the crux of our recommendations this year, is that we just need a little bit more information to actually make solid changes to the law. So to follow on with that, we think that that the driver's test questions should be reviewed to make sure they're including new infrastructure and policies, especially as they relate to pedestrian and bicyclist safety, and looking at the driver's ed program to make sure that the driving schools are using the most current materials, and those materials and instructors are up to date on new laws and infrastructure. We also would like the curriculum to be evaluated and ensure that we're educating young drivers to the best of our ability. So a lot of stuff came up in our conversations about how it's currently set up, especially if people are on Zoom classes and answers are provided ahead of time. We're wondering, how well we're educating our youth. And following on to that is, how are we educating people as they get older, 20, 40, 50 years out from having their initial driver's test? How are we reaching those people with new information, new infrastructure, and retesting? So that would be another thing that a researcher could look into, is what other states are doing to educate people periodically throughout their lives. We have two other recommendations from there. One is to increase community education on new policies and infrastructure. So again, as people have very few opportunities to learn more and be educated as things roll out, infrastructure wise, and policy wise. So we would recommend increasing public announcements regarding changes in driving laws and new infrastructure. So that might be advertisements that reach the public about new information. So for example, roundabouts are becoming more popular in Connecticut. So doing a little bit of educational outreach about what those are, things like LPIs and concurrent signaling as those roll out as well. So maybe some more public education, sort of in the vein of the pedestrian rules. And finally, we support adding a permanent line to the state's budget for car seats for families in need. So it's vital that these are a standalone funding that's not part of a larger DOT budget, so that it doesn't risk being cut, and it has sustainability. And the car seat distribution program that is already proposed includes parent education on proper car seat usage to ensure children are safely and correctly restrained. And it addresses equity and child passenger safety, since low-income families and families of color are less likely to have access to the proper child safety seat. And these summary of these recommendations have been submitted to the council. Thanks.
Any questions for the subcommittee chairs and council members? See any hands up. I will say thank you to all the subcommittees for all the work on this. We continue to see progress each year with things that are adopted and put in place, either through legislation or just through practice that come up through the subcommittee. So thank you all for all the hard work. So if you haven't already, for the subcommittees, if you haven't already submitted the final language package into Aaron, please do that. And then Aaron and all of us at the DOT, largely Aaron, are going to do the work to compile into final language that we'll then send over to get proofread and everything packaged and then sent over to the legislature as our annual report. So we will run it past the council members for one final review before submission. And sign off from the council members. Okay. So looking ahead to 2025, there have been some discussions about subcommittee reorganization or tasks, some questions about that. I think you already heard one of those issues about a need for some, the subcommittees have better access to data analysis. That's a recommendation that came in. So wanted to raise that as a topic for discussion. Also open up to the subcommittee chairs to talk about any thing you'd like to raise as potential reorganization or refocus beyond our four subcommittees. So council members or subcommittees, if you have any thoughts on focus areas that we should focus on, and then we can move on to meeting topics after that. So any thoughts on subcommittee structure, topic areas? I think the idea of maybe doing some deeper data dive is helpful. We do obviously have access to the team at UConn who can help with a lot of that. So if there are things that subcommittees want some deeper data dive into, we can always elevate that up to UConn, right, Brian? Your team would be the one passing along that request. So, but we do partner with UConn's Transportation Institute to do a lot of the work on the Highway Safety Office side. So we have that tool available to us. Any thoughts? No? Okay.
Send in.
Yeah, you can definitely send in things.
Think about, we have some time before we get, going again next year. send them in, share with the council, share. So, chairs.
Katie?
One thing we had talked about was, and we did this year where like if there was a topic we weren't as familiar with, we had someone come in and talk to our committee on. So we wanted to continue that for 2025, and we are looking from committee members on this equity, if there were any topics they were particularly interested in. But if other committees have like similar trainings, maybe we could do like a partners training.
That's a great idea. I mean, that the enforcement subcommittee, you had someone from Central Asset Action Bureau come in and actually explain to them how
Traffic adjudication.
right, especially electronic trafficking. That's a presentation I think that would have value for all the subcommittees. So if there's ideas and folks that you want to work with, I offer to help coordinate that. That's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you have the folks you want, we can figure out how to schedule that.
In that same breath, if anybody ever is looking for a ride along, I know John has done a couple with some DOT staff and whatnot, but we're very open to it. It's a slight waiver we have to sign, but we'd be happy to show you exactly what it is we do and how we do it. If there's any questions for behind the scenes stuff, anytime, just reach out to John or I or whatnot, and we'd be happy to set anyone on the committees up with that. So please reach out.
Great.
I'll also add too, just, we talk about the educational component of what we do, we're always looking for new opportunities also. I mean, I know a lot of people in this room have given us some, great connections, and we're always looking to expand.
Okay. We've got a hand raised from Susan. I think we also have a chat item too. So Susan?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. So I was wondering, we do a lot of the data analysis around using emergency department data as well as hospitalization data. I know I've talked about sharing that. We've shared that with the crash data repository folks. But if there are some reports that we've created, such as I mentioned the fact sheet, can some of those materials, we actually post them on our DPH website, but could we link them to the Vision Zero Council? I'm looking at the website right now, and I don't see a lot of data associated with Vision Zero and some of the questions that people might have that we could possibly answer. Is there some way to do that or think about doing that?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so any materials that your agencies have that you think is applicable, just send it over to Erin. We can get it posted on the Vision Zero website as well, on the resources. So, thank you, Susan. Okay. So for next year, definitely want to have, ideas for potential topics for discussion. One thing we do want to continue is to have outside participants come in, hearing from local municipalities, because we know a large number of the serious injuries and fatalities occur on state roadways, but also that is only about a quarter of the total lane mileage in the state. The rest of it is local roadways. That we continue to have serious injuries and fatalities occur on local roads, and we know there are many municipalities who are taking significant steps to address safety on their roads as well, and having a focus on Vision Zero. So we want to invite in local partners to present, talk about what they're doing, so we can hear from them. So if you have thoughts or ideas on topics you'd like to hear about over the course of 2025, we welcome that. We'd like to, you all to submit that over to Erin for, or if there's you don't know who would be the best speaker, but you have a concept of what you want to hear about, just send that over to Erin and myself, and we can do some research on who would be best to come talk to the council on that. So I know one thing just to flag for everyone, every state agency is a member of like a trade association, right? So like I know DMV is a member of AMVA, and DPH is a member of NASHO or something, or the National Association of State Health Officials, right? Territorial health officials. So DOT is a member of AASHTO, State Highway Transportation Officials. And so I'm taking over as president for the next 12 months. And so we get to choose an emphasis area when we take over as president. So my focus has been on, it's going to be safety. And it's modeled after the safe systems approach that Matt talked about. So AASHTO, all 52 state DOTs are going to focus on safe infrastructure, which we're calling safe communities, because each community is different, focusing on safe users, so the behavioral side of the house, but also how you can use technology to make vehicles safer for people inside and outside the vehicles. And then safe workers. So a key focus on workforce safety for anyone who's working in the transportation space, DOT officials, state troopers, EMS, also on the railroad side. But we, at the annual meeting, talked about Trooper Pelletier, and I spoke about our colleague Andrew DiDomenico, and highlighted that as the risks of working in the transportation sector and why we need to focus on our workforce. That's going to be a key focus, and I can, at a future meeting, report out on that and what we're doing at the national level. And then I know we're also having Katie Hedberg, who spoke earlier from the Equity Committee. She's doing a lot of work, and she's going to actually work at the Transportation Research Board next month, which is called TRB. It's about 15,000 people, usually transportation nerds, all show up on research stuff. Katie's going to be participating on presenting or have opportunities for people to learn how it is to operate in a transportation system with an impairment of some kind, or a mobility disability, mobility impairment, whether it's visual impairment or some other form of mobility impairment. So she's bringing tools for people to actually learn how to move through the system like that. And it's going to be an opportunity for us to train our national engineers on how it is to operate in a transportation system, whether you have this difficulty seeing or difficulty using your legs or other forms of mobility impairment. So appreciate all the work Katie is doing nationally now to highlight that. So any final thoughts on 2025 before we move on? Okay. Next slide. Okay, so for future meeting dates, these are the ones we've identified. Obviously, if things come up and we have difficulty getting quorum for any of these, we will revisit them. But this is what we have right now. I think meeting holds will go out, so they'll be held on your calendar. So don't worry about scratching them all down right now. We will send out those calendar invites. I think next step is public comment. Yep. Okay. So public comment, as Aaron usually says, I'll say it since I'm standing here, so you don't have to get up, but raise your hand if you want to be unmuted and comment, or enter your questions into the chat, and we will take those questions or comments. Got a hand raised. Okay. Jason.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, sorry I joined late. I live in West Hartford. I have been I'm on the board of Bike West Hartford. We've been doing a lot of advocacy work for safe streets, not just for cyclists, but for pedestrians and just safer streets in general. I have over the last 2 years, I've contacted DOT no less than 5 times about the state of Route 4 in our section of town. There's a lot of people who use the buses on Route 4, and the bus shelters are, if shelters exist, are comical. Otherwise, it's just a stake in the ground. And then, people work at the nursing home there, for example. People work at Yukon Health Center, and they're like getting off the bus and walking along the side of like a highway, basically, where people are driving, 45 miles an hour conservatively. So it's very unsafe. And then on top of that, there's the recreational users, people who are going up to the reservoir. And, you see a lot of joggers, a lot of cyclists. And you've got this merge at the bottom of the hill that sort of encourages motorists to be kind of looking over their shoulder to negotiate the merge, as opposed to looking forward at people potentially walking or running or biking on the shoulder of the road, and people race each other up that merge. And so again, I've contacted DOT, I think 5 times now, and I've also contacted our town engineers. I know you guys have a policy that you will work with town engineers for quick builds. I've just never been able to move this ball forward at all, and it's kind of a disaster waiting to happen. I'm amazed that something hasn't happened in a while. So that's why I made time out of my workday to come to this meeting, is I want to talk to you in person. Like, how can we move this ball forward? Because Route 4 is clearly dangerous. And there is space on that road for a sidewalk, a multi-use path, quick build, bollards or whatever. Can you please do something about Route 4? Because it's really dangerous. All right, that's my question.
Okay, well, thank you. We don't do anything without local government participation and involvement. So if the town of West Hartford is elevating this, we will definitely flag this for the town engineer, your comment. I know our team has said that you've commented in the past. I believe those have in some cases been responded to by Anna Bergeron and from our team. And I would encourage you also on the bus shelter program or bus shelters. Bus shelters are local responsibility, but the state of Connecticut DOT is spending over $20 million installing bus shelters at locations that local governments have flagged as priority areas, working through their councils of governments. So the town of West Hartford should be working with CROG and with CONDOT to prioritize specific locations that have unsafe locations, because every bus shelter that we install is going to be modern, ADA accessible. We are aiming to have lighting, and at the heaviest locations have real-time arrival signage. So definitely, if there are certain ones that are being heavily utilized by people going to work at any of those nursing homes, I definitely encourage the town of West Hartford to flag that for our team. And we'll also flag this comment for our bus shelter enhancement program BSEP team, so they can look at Route 4 there.
Yeah, thank you for that response. I just quickly looked through my email, and I did email Anna, but I don't recall ever hearing back from Anna. It would be great to have this conversation, and we'll keep pushing on our end for our town engineers to do something, and I'll tell them, like, we had this conversation, please get in touch with CTDOT. I've never heard back from our town engineer, from Greg or anybody on his team about Greg Summer on his team about this, and I don't recall ever hearing back from Anna either. But so you're saying basically we need to make the citizens of West Hartford need to make our town contact you guys to do something. Is that correct?
No, the state DOT will always look at any unsafe conditions, but we're not going to do anything unless the town is involved in that process as well. Because, several decades ago, state DOTs got in trouble for coming in and overriding local governments. And our DOT now is much more collaborative. And so we want to make sure that everything we do is in partnership with local government.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to just get on Greg's back more.
And Terry from CROG can probably talk loudly so the microphone can hear you.
Okay, just so Vision Zero, they have a task force, and they had a task force in West Hartford. Vision Zero Task Force. I don't know
yeah,
if
I'm
you
well
brought
aware.
that to their attention.
Yes,
But,
the members of the task force are frustrated because of the town's reluctance to engage in quick builds, and sort of the slow pace of progress.
Yeah, we'll reach out to West Hartford too to say we've had this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Don't see any more hands raised, but I see 2 comments in the box. One is from Janet. Because crash reports are used to inform projects, can we look at how to standardize the way local police departments enforce, investigate, report, and issue citations? In some instances, that appears to be subjective. I don't know if CSP or DCJ have thoughts on that.
Sometimes it is subjective. There's, whatever happens, you get, what's it called? Like a word, your option if you can take it. Discretion. You work with your own discretion. You analyze, vehicle history, operator history, all that kind of stuff. Depending on what dangerous violation they did, is rolling through a stop sign at a lonely intersection at 3 in the morning is dangerous as rolling through a red light on 66 in Middletown during rush hour. Maybe that would dictate a different response, a ticket versus a warning. So we do utilize a little, on-site analysis of what's going on to then in turn give an infraction. And I'm sure I can speak on behalf of municipal PDs as well. So there is a little bit of subjectivity there. And we're called the carpet in court. We're usually asked that, and that's kind of the way that goes.
Okay. And I know DCJ, you do trainings for local law enforcement on motor vehicle laws, right? So.
Absolutely. But again, it is, like with regard to the arrest and initial charge, it is within the officer's discretion. But we talk about all of the laws with our officers regarding to impaired driving and beyond. To make sure that they are very aware of what the laws say and what they can do under them.
Okay, thank you. And I know Janet has spoken to me before as well, so I will connect that issue with others who have Janet's issues. And from Judith, can the Vision Zero Council revisit the use of intelligent speed assistance for repeat DUI users in 2025? This is an initiative Families for Safe Streets is advocating for New York State. So I think this is basically putting like speed governors on vehicles. So we can definitely look at that. I know in California, they just, the governor vetoed a bill that would have put speed notifications in all vehicles that are sold. But we can definitely look at what Families for Safe Streets is doing in New York State, and I can flag that for the legislature as well, their new legislative chairs. Not seeing any more Q&A. Okay. So before we close, I will just flag for all the council members and subcommittee members. So legislative session begins in January. There is a new transportation committee chair. So Representative Roland Lamar, who has been chair for several years and has really been, he created this council and has been very active. He is moving to General Law Committee. So the new House chair is Representative Amy Berger-Javallo from Ridgefield. Senator Cohen continues to be the Senate chair, and the ranking members remain Senator Wong and Representative Kennedy. So we have a new chair, but the other three leadership members remain the same on the Transportation Committee. So what I'd like to do is invite them in probably one of our first meetings of the year to have the Transportation Committee leadership speak to the council about what their priorities are. I think it'd be important for us to hear from them. Okay, so any other items before we adjourn? Seeing none. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and a happy new year. And stay safe on the roads. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
They love each other.
And bottom right. Bottom right. They changed it.